This video is brought to you by Nokian Tires, a leader in safety and sustainability. Maximize performance and efficiency with their made in USA all-season tires and their dedicated Hakkapeliitta EV winter line from the inventor of the winter tire. Learn more at nokiantire.com/EV. This video is also brought to you by Magna, forward for all.
Do you remember the Volkswagen Arteon or the Volkswagen Phaeton even? Statistically speaking, probably not, because they didn't really sell well in the US, but they should have. They were such fantastic sedans. But today I have the new flagship sedan from Volkswagen, the ID.7. It kind of carries some of those ethos of like the mid-size luxury sedan. So you join me in the south of France for what is hopefully going to be a bit more of an in-depth look at the Volkswagen ID.7. Let's go. So Kyle has already done a few videos with this car. He did an initial walk around over in New York, and then he did a first drive event. I think that was in Germany perhaps. Anyways, each of those events, you should still go watch them. He has a lot of great information, as usual, out of spec style, a lot of nerdy things. But he had about 20 minutes with the car each time. So we're gonna take a bit more of an in-depth look with it today, a bit more driving. We're actually doing a bit of a road trip here. I've got Tom Moloughney with me, way over there somewhere. And we are filming together for each of our own channels. And this is, yeah, the Volkswagen ID.7, a bit more up close and personal and a bit closer to production. The ones Kyle filmed before were very early pre-production prototypes. This is still technically a pre-production prototype, and this is specifically a Euro spec. We are not getting it in the US quite as soon, but we are getting it in the US, which is going to be really interesting because sedans, like we said in the intro, don't sell that well. But before we go in and drive, I just wanted to give you a really quick walk around of the exterior out in the natural daylight. Kyle showed you one on kind of the showroom, but this is kind of maybe my impressions. I love this kind of blade style light up here, accent lighting that we've seen on some of the higher trims of the other ID products. I think it's fantastic. The eyeball type headlights also. And yeah, this is the aquamarine blue, kind of a dark blue. And with all the ID.7s, you do have the contrasting color on the top. I don't actually know if that's a trim specific color difference, but this little silver piece is nice that breaks it up. And the glass roof always looks classy and looks great on the inside. What's perhaps very noticeable with the ID.7 as a different thing other than the other ID products is this specific taillight design, kind of like fan blade type thing, all LED, very, very interesting. ID light, as they call it. Everything just says ID light. Even the light on the interior dashboard is the ID light. But yeah, these are the, I believe, 20s. It'll come with 19s or 20s from the factory as different options, perhaps with different trim levels. And they're fine, very Volkswagen-ish. Nothing really wrong with that. But this is a big, stately car. They call it mid-size luxury sedan. I guess it seems a bit larger than mid-size to me, but I guess it's not quite the like super long wheelbase of some of the other like Mercedes-Benz long wheelbase cars. But this one is long, 116 inches wheelbase, 195 inches overall length, which is ever so slightly shorter than Model S, but longer than some of the other sedans out there, especially like Model 3. It is a bit longer than Model Y even. And it is a liftback. As you can see back here, the trunk is a nice opening, and I think that is really the way to do a sedan. And this might help it sell a little bit better than US. People seem to love the kind of hatchback slash liftback designs. You do have the charging flap here, which we're gonna be charging it a bit later, but here's your CCS type 2 connector because we're in Europe, and that's fine. And the charging flap opening up is actually a really nice touch. I think that's really the right way to do it. Gives you a little bit of protection from the elements, and let's say you're charging in a garage and your cable has to come from that way or from that way. Whichever way they choose, if it was left or right, would be in the way of perhaps some other people. The door handles that are typical Volkswagen, I think they're fine. Not my favorite. I do like some of the ones that actually open up, but I think I will take this over Model 3 and Model Y door handle. Let me know what you guys think. But yeah, fantastic use of space. Very, very spacious indeed. This is also 73 inches wide, 60 inches tall, which makes it about the width of the Arteon and a little bit taller than the Arteon. Not quite as wide as the Phaeton, but still a little bit taller than the Phaeton as well. So it is comparable with the actual size. And no, there is still no front trunk. That's just something Volkswagen's not doing with the ID family. I think it's fine. A lot of people actually in Europe don't even ask for front trunks, but that is one thing that sets them aside from some of the competition. Some people really want the front trunk. I personally like having the option, but then again, everything that's in the front trunk now would have to be repackaged somewhere else, re-engineered, which of course they don't want to re-engineer what they don't have to. So for now, how it sits, I think it's fine. There's plenty of space in the back. But yeah, that's kind of a brief look on the outside. So I think it's a fairly attractive car, nice and stately, and I don't know, what do you guys think of the outside? You also probably want to know how it drives. Now, I personally want to see how it drives. I know Kyle got a little drive with the Volkswagen, but it was a really limited route, very short, and he had, of course, Volkswagen with him in the car. This time it's just me and Tom. We're going to give you our unfiltered opinions, and we're going to go take it up to somewhere, I don't know, up in the mountains near the south of France. I don't really know where we are, but we're going to find out. Let's go. All right, we're inside the, I almost called it an Arteon, the ID.7. Can you believe Kyle went to SEMA instead of coming with us to the south of France?
You know, as great as this is in the south of France is so cool, SEMA is a really good show.
It is.
So I can understand. He's already spent time with the ID.7. So
Yep.
for him, it was old hat, but I'm glad I'm here.
Same, yeah. And before we take off, obviously, the first thing I need to do is show off this. Never gets old. Every car that I get in that has that, I just do that for the first few times. But guess we'll get started. It's very familiar ID things. Of course, every time you say ID, nope, go away. Every time you say the word, it wants to talk
Don't
to you.
say it. Or her name.
Yeah, which you can rename though. That's pretty cool. Some people don't know that the virtual assistant, I think Ida, okay, didn't do anything,
No.
stands for ID assistant, which is kind of the name they gave it. But yeah, so we're starting right off on basically French country roads, which are lovely. I mean, really any European country road is a nice place to be. Really enjoy driving them. And this is actually a pretty comfortable way to do it. It's not as spicy as, say, an ID.2 GTI. Maybe I'd rather be in one of those. But this is probably the more comfortable way. But what is your impression of the ID.7 so far?
So far, you know, I'm impressed by the level of, let's say, premium that it feels.
Yeah.
You know, this is, when I think of Volkswagen, I think of the people's car, you know, and I think of, you know, the form following function and, you know, affordable transportation, which is still the heart of the Volkswagen brand. But this is, it feels like a luxury car. And,
Yeah.
and I know it's not all appointed on the inside with the materials and so forth of a high-end BMW or Mercedes, but it feels premium.
Yeah, it's bridging that gap a little bit, and they kind of market this as mid-size luxury sedan, sort of, kind of. And I'd say it is fairly luxurious, especially for the price. You can, of course, get higher-end German luxury, but then you're also paying maybe double. We don't know pricing on this yet as of this recording. That's one still missing factor that Kyle complained about not having the last time he spent time with it a while ago, but that's fine. We can at least review it as a car in its own satellite environment.
And we don't really have EPA rated range yet either. So those are two big missing
Yeah.
pieces. But we kind of have a good feel for how far it's going to go. You know, it's a very efficient vehicle for such a big vehicle.
Yeah, and that's something we can comment on, is a lot of people do chase those numbers, and on one hand, that is a good way to compare cars, is numbers on paper. But that's why we do, 70 mile an hour standardized range test and all that. We want to compare cars apples to apples. But you also need to realize how the car exists in and of itself. And I am thoroughly enjoying it as is. These are rough roads, and I'm pretty comfortable. So what's great in these rough roads is the dynamic chassis control, which we finally have on an ID product in the US. It's really fantastic. The drive modes, I guess they kind of span eco and comfort and sport. This is not exactly sporty, as you would say, but it does the old electric thing of instant torque off the line. But I think it's not really the 0 to 60 party trick animal. which I think is fine. So many people obsess over that number, but this is plenty of power to get out of its own way.
I agree with 100%.
If I put it in sport mode, still throws your head back in the seat. It's fine. It's probably going to be faster than most Arteon / Phaeton examples that existed prior, which people don't always compare that to. And like you've told me in previous conversations, a lot of people who are adopting these cars were existing ICE owners. And so any sort of electric torque is like kind of exhilarating to them with good reason. And we as people who spend a lot of time in EVs, we get kind of, we're bored of it. Or we're used to it, I should say.
Spoiled.
We still love it, but it's easy to forget that standard has changed over the years. And now it's like, wait, you mean it doesn't go 60 in 3 seconds? And this doesn't exactly have to. Even in sport mode, the chassis feels fairly comfortable. They've done a lot of improvements on the dampening. They've even improved the rear suspension over other ID products with now better bushings. So it really is meant to be a nice grand tourer. It's supposed to just ride and you can go on long road trips. You don't throw it back into comfort, but in individual, you can actually set the level of dampedness, I guess. I don't know what the word is, but the suspension softness of a long variety, so many stopping points on that adjustment meter, and it's fantastic. I like that they are giving you a lot of fine tunability with that. Even with the sound system, this is equipped with the premium Harman Kardon sound system. It's fantastic, 700 watts, sounds really good. A lot of adjustability, 5-band EQ with separate subwoofer control. So I like that they give you that German thing of do what you want with it, adjust it to infinity. So there's a few new or improved things, or perhaps both, that we could talk about. One of them of which is the seats. These are new, these are fantastic. They're called Ergo Active or something like that. Ergo Active Premium. So they are now cooled, they're ventilated as well as being heated, and full massage. Like, we got in here and the first thing we did was set the massaging on. I did full intensity all the way up through the back and the bottom, and everything just works. What do you think of the seats?
The seats are great, and the voice activation can also control the seats. Like if I were to say, Ida, the driver's butt is cold.
Got it. The front left seat will get warmer shortly.
That's fantastic. And I like how you didn't say it's freezing, you just said cold, and she's like, all right, full blast
I got
heat.
it. Yeah, oh yeah, so 3 bars, so.
Yeah, it's great. And the massage, there's 11 different massaging functions, and they each have their own intensity levels. It's really fantastic, and the full intensity one is actually very impressive. There's a few other cars, namely, like I've been in the Jeep Grand Cherokee recently, and its massage is more of a gentle kind of tap happening behind you, so not exactly great. But what else is new is, speaking of the virtual assistant, this fantastic 15-inch screen, which is the same size as Model 3 and Model Y, so if you're familiar with that, you'll love it. But this even goes beyond that, I think. There's actually a little display in front of the driver, similar to ID.4 and other ID products, although it's a bit more integrated to the dash. But the infotainment is definitely improved. In the earlier years, I mean, the first year of the ID.4 especially, the infotainment was, I'd say, borderline abysmal, just really not that great to work with, not super responsive. Even the capacitive buttons, people are kind of iffy on. They're still iffy. I see people passionately one way or the other. I will say I've grown to like them more. I still would prefer tactile buttons, and people have mentioned, I think next generation ID might go back to tactile buttons. But these are at least backlit now, which was another complaint, getting an ID.4 or ID.5 and you just couldn't see what you were doing. But I don't know. Is it pretty snappy in your opinion?
Yeah, no, that's one of the biggest things that I wanted to really check out, was how the improved UI is. And it is incredibly improved over the previous version that Volkswagen had. That was the biggest, my biggest complaint about when the ID.4 first came out. It was just so slow and so laggy and so inadequate compared to other vehicles out there today. They've solved that with this new 4.0. In my opinion, it's snappy, it's bright, it's big. This is a good center display.
Yeah, and CarPlay looks fantastic on it. Android Auto, I'm sure, does too. It's just great. They're fixing things, which is important, and they're listening to their customers, they're listening to the journalists. They still haven't listened yet on this silly window switch situation. That just, it's 2 buttons and you have to cycle between whether it's rear or front, and I really despise that. You can, of course, hold down on whatever it is to roll them all down at the same time or something, but it's silly. You shouldn't have to have a life hack for your own car to do a very basic function.
We're averaging 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour, which isn't great, but we've been also not driving it for efficiency.
Yeah, we're kind of driving it to test it, I'd say. But it seems to be fairly efficient, and that's what Volkswagen has said is supposed to be very efficient. This has the new APP 550 rear motor, which is supposed to be impressive, and I think that's what they're going to have to do to make this succeed in the US is be kind of an efficiency monster, not necessarily a range monster. As far as we know, this is going to have both the small, or I guess existing battery pack, but as well as a new larger one that'll be 86 kilowatt hours net. That will be nice, and that will hopefully push it well into the 300s as far as range, which I think they'll need for people to really jump into it. As we know, range isn't necessarily the most important factor. Charging is a huge component, and this thing charges fairly decently. In fact, maybe we should go cut to our charging session where we stop right off the highway and try to figure out how to plug this thing in. All right, so we've stopped for our first stop on this little road trip we're doing, and Tom and I just plugged the car in at 45% state of charge to an NG Simon C-Charge situation right here off one of the French highways, the A52, sorry. And yeah, plugged in at 45% state of charge. The first charger we tried didn't actually work with the credit card, so then the second one worked. So hey, infrastructure is not even perfect over here in Europe, but it is pretty good. These chargers seem to be great. They both have 2 stalls each, or 2 plugs each. So what's cool though is the car itself predicted it would take in about 109 kilowatt peak when we plugged in. The car told us that based on, I'm guessing, battery temperature perhaps, and the state of charge, the pack voltage and everything. So we plugged in at 45%, it said it could do up to 109 kilowatts. We actually saw a brief peak of like 115 to 120. It settled in right about 113. It is just over 100 kilowatt. We've already gone up 5%, so we may charge up to about 75% here. But yeah, so far a pretty good trip. Fantastically comfortable. This is a good time I can stop and point out perhaps the rear passenger volume, because me and Tom are sitting in the front for the whole trip, enjoying all the technology and features up there. But for right now, let's actually look at the rear space, because that's what some of you guys have asked when I inquired about questions. So I'm sitting behind myself right now, and oh my gosh, I have so much room. Even headroom. It is a sloped back. This is not the wagon version, which doesn't even matter for us US people because they're not going to bring the wagon to the US. Currently, that's what they're saying, but that could change if we start buying wagons. But yeah, I'm sitting behind myself. Plenty of room for those of you who have asked. It's a relatively high-ish floor. Like, my feet are probably a bit higher up than I would be in, say, the Arteon or the Phaeton, but the roof line is also higher than the Arteon and Phaeton, at least on the exterior dimension. So it's almost like the whole passenger space was just brought up just a little bit. But it's fantastic. I have great sight lines. I don't feel claustrophobic at all. The glass roof, of course, helps. Currently, it is on the opaque mode, but we can, you've seen us mess with that all the time. And the seats themselves are really comfortable. These are the kind of mixture of cloth and leatherette materials, so seems to be great. We even have back here heated seats, temperature control for the rear passengers, and 2 vents in the middle, which is a unique solution. So you can have both vents pointing one way, or both vents pointing the other way, or one each direction. 2 USB-C chargers, and cup holders here, and of course your pass-through for skis and such, if you're into that type of thing. Backseat space, fantastic. Even a little bit of that stitching, a lot of nice materials, nice touch points. But these door handles are pretty easy to pull, so I would suggest being accustomed to the child lock feature if you have little ones. I will even add the middle seat is quite comfortable. You may have seen Kyle's first drive where Alyssa was sitting here in the middle filming the front, and yeah, totally fine. Bring the headrest up, it's great. Not as comfortable, obviously, as the other 4 seats, but in a pinch, or even I'd say a shortish road trip, I'd be fine with that. Dipped down to 100 kilowatts right at 56% state of charge. So we're charging for 15 minutes before we head on out, but it looks like we've gotten right up to 69%, so almost 25% of the battery. It'll be about 25% or just over after charging for 15 minutes, which isn't bad considering we pulled in with, you know, middle pack state of charge. It's already below 90 kilowatts though, which isn't quite the roll-off we like to see. 75% up, see if this gives us...
Nah, did nothing.
We can keep going up. What a use of a huge screen. So we got to 75% in unplug time. 30% of the battery.
Yeah.
So not bad.
30% of the battery in like about 16 minutes. That's considering we started at a high state of charge. That's pretty good.
And yeah, 75 kilowatts at 75%. That's easy to remember. So it charges. We were able to successfully charge it, which we weren't even sure if we could do, but
we figured it out.
Mission accomplished.
Well, I will note, we weren't able to do it on the first charger. The first charger that we used wouldn't accept credit cards as it's supposed to. And you were smart enough. You said, let me go see if the next one will. And I keep banging the button like to make it accept that credit card.
Am I
you
smart?
walk over there like, this one works.
Am I smart enough, or am I just used to American chargers?
See, that was the problem. I'm so used to the chargers working in Europe that I was like, I must be doing something wrong. If I keep pressing this button, it will eventually take my credit card. It didn't, but the one next to it did, and we were able to charge.
Yes, so we finally got charging, and it doesn't charge amazingly, but it doesn't charge poorly. It charges. We would have loved to see maybe a bit higher kilowatt pouring in near 70%, but on the other hand, it's fine. It doesn't like plateau super early for some reason. So I think it's fine, and I think this is going to be a great road tripper. I mean, comfort aside, which we've already talked about, is fantastic. As long as it charges decently, that's a really important component for road tripping. And because this feels to me like such a grand touring car, I would gladly take this across the country, especially Europe where you're not doing super long hauls. But even in the US, I think it'd be fine. Another important piece of technology that they try to highlight is travel assist, which I do think is a very important piece, and it works fantastically. I've always loved it in ID.4, spent a lot of time in the ID.5 around Germany using travel assist. It's a really good implementation. It actually lets you like control which part of the lane you want to be in, which is pretty neat. It lets you like set slightly to the right or slightly to the left, whereas a lot of systems just default to something, which isn't always centered. Travel assist is even working right now. We're not on a major highway, but I have it turned on. It is doing lane centering and, of course, adaptive cruise control. We're very familiar with that at this point. But even on the highway, it does some automatic lane changes. Like if I just hit the turn signal, it'll show me in the augmented reality display, which is another cool feature of technology in this car, that it is ready to do the lane change, and it does it pretty much perfectly. There's a couple times where it's like a little bit hesitant, but I'd say mostly as a driver assistance system, it's up there with some of the better ones. I've definitely seen worse. This one is a bit more confidence inspiring, even as far as slowing down for corners automatically. Even on a twisty road that we were kind of filming back here earlier, it did just fine. It didn't quite get the turns all the way, which it was like, please help me. But it did slow down very dramatically, which was, I'd say, a very safe, I'd rather lean them safe than sorry, you know? These French roundabouts are something else. They lean into, you know, some of the humor around the French, I'd say, talk about it, and I didn't realize just how accurate it is. They're everywhere. But I will say, people seem to know how to use them. If I had just watched the Grand Tour French special, for example, I would have assumed no one in France knows how to use roundabouts. But That's satire for you.
I remember years ago when I went to Paris, I was driving around the Arc de Triomphe. There's like a million cars, and it was like I almost couldn't get out. Like I just kept driving around because I didn't know when was appropriate for me to
You're just
turn.
stuck in a whirlpool.
But I thought it was fun. I was dying laughing, and I'm just driving around the Arc de Triomphe, which was cool. But this is a little more rural where we are here than the center of Paris.
Rural and beautiful. I mean, we have rolling hills,
beautiful.
kind of cliffs and vineyards everywhere. Yeah. I'm impressed.
I tell you, it doesn't suck to get invited to first drives and go on these, get to drive these vehicles that nobody's driven yet.
Yeah.
In these beautiful areas around the world. So it's definitely a perk of doing this for a living.
Yeah, and it's great to see these vehicles in different scenarios. So, for example, we started at the airport. We drove through town, which Marseille is the town we're kind of based in this trip. You can see some of the tight streets and tight corridors, and then you're thinking, this is a fairly large car. Long wheelbase, which is interesting. This is the same wheelbase as the ID Buzz, although the short wheelbase version of that. But that makes this the long wheelbase of a sedan, which is great on the highways, for example, which I'm glad we're able to test this on the highways. But testing it around town, I mean, what do you think, navigating those slightly tighter city streets and even navigating to the house where we had lunch?
Yeah, it was tight. It was tight, but it's nimble. And it's got a great turning radius.
It really
does. So, progressive steering that really seems to be tuned just right. And that's another one of the things that Volkswagen brought up, that they, I think, made the progressive turning a little more aggressive.
Yeah.
Or just tuned it a little, and it works. So I didn't have a problem, but it was tight where we were driving for sure. And I think Volkswagen even might have mentioned that one of the other journalists might have hit something because it was so tight recently. We're not going to mention the outlet, but we passed the test. We made it through. There's this one really tight area that they have us going on, and they warned us today. They're like, yeah, we had a casualty yesterday, and I think one of the ID.7s is getting some body work done.
Yeah, it's a little frightening sometimes, but so far, hopefully you're feeling safe. I couldn't find track mode. I looked, but
this is not a track mode car.
You're right.
This is a grand tour. Enjoy yourself. Buckle up. Put the massaging seats on and just go for a drive,
Exactly. And I wish they had like a neck massage. That's what I really need right now.
Well, maybe don't look at me.
Something to add to the future ID products, although that could be distracting.
And for America, this is not considered a big vehicle. This is considered a small vehicle.
It's like normal or small.
Pull next to an Escalade, and they're going to be looking down at you like, what's that little thing over there? But for here in Europe, it's a big car.
So the length of this thing is, like I mentioned, a tiny bit smaller than the S, I think 2 inches shorter. But the way they have packaged the interior means you and I right now have fantastic room. The rear room is fantastic. I mean, you feel amply comfortable. You could probably sit there all day if you had to.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, but the storage capacity is a tiny bit less than the Model S.
It's got better headroom than an S.
It does, yeah, on both the front and rear, which is great. And that is a concern a little bit with these slope back cars. You're wondering how the rear headroom. Ioniq 6, for example, not great. I actually hit the ceiling when I'm leaning back in the back seat of Ioniq 6. Not the 5, because it's a hatchback. But I do wish we got this as a wagon. We just saw one at the house we had lunch at, and it was just this horrible tease because seeing that partially because we saw it maybe on a terrace overlooking the Mediterranean. But regardless, I would love a wagon. And I just wish that wishful thinking of if only the US people would actually buy wagons. Over here, they'll sell it, and we'll just be jealous in the meantime.
Yeah, that's the problem. As much as you and I love them, and a lot of people love them, not enough. And wagons just don't sell in the U.S.
Yeah.
People are like, give me an SUV, so they manufacturers just don't give us wagons anymore because they don't sell them.
It makes sense. It just makes me sad. And what we're on right now is technically the international first drive. So it has been a bit challenging in some cases to figure out what's coming to the US. Some of that is still honestly to be announced as far as exact trims. Of course, like we mentioned, we don't know the pricing or the EPA numbers. WLTP though, that's fairly impressive, and I'd say relatively accurate for some of the actual European driving. They just have typically some slower speed limits than us. And depending on how you drive, obviously, you can get almost any range. If you drive like crazy, you can get half the range. Or if you just go super slow and smooth, you'll get a lot more. This maybe being a bit slower might mean a bit better range on that end as well. It's almost like the motor is detuned a bit, because I'm sure they could have cranked more out of it. But 210 kilowatt rear motor gives you a 0 to 60 time in 6.5 seconds, which by our standards is slow, but it's really not terrible. Mustang Mach-E, when that launched, the rear wheel drive variant, 6 seconds 0 to 60. And it's a Mustang. It's a quote unquote sportsy car. So this not even being marketed as a sports car, I think that's fine. Like we mentioned, it's not always about the numbers. So on one hand, there's kind of a lot to take in, but it's still innately ID. I'm really glad we get dynamic chassis control for the first time on EV in the US. I think, at least from Volkswagen, I think that's kind of one of the best parts to me, honestly. Just driving, Golf R and some of the other offerings that have DCC, it's so great to be able to dial it from stiff to soft and really anywhere in between. At least that's something I feel like I value. This does carry a lot of that Arteon ethos to me, which I think is a really neat place in the segment. It's a lot of people think of, Volkswagen is, like you said, the people's car. I mean, literally, that's what it translates to. But you can still get nice and luxurious feeling within that. You don't have to jump to Audi or any of the other more premium German segments. If you like how Volkswagens operate, and I feel like they are a very specific vehicle. I mean, the infotainment is very specific, the way they drive and feel and even look. If you like that, you can still get that nicer feel. And they're not going to charge like the same as an S-Class. Obviously, this isn't an S-Class, but it is that mid-luxury thing that I think some people are actually striving for. And that's why I loved the Arteon. I guess I can believe why it didn't sell super well. It's just not a car that a lot of people are looking for. In the US, there's, I think, 15% market share for sedans, so it's not huge, but that's still a lot of cars because the US sells a lot of cars, and buys a lot of cars. There still is the sedan people, and I think a lot of those people are kind of looking at EV for their next car. They might even have a Model 3 and they want something a little bit nicer. I feel like this does feel nicer than Model 3. Not that we're trying to directly compare, and again, we don't know the price of this yet, but I don't see it being crazy different than Arteon, for example. Basically flagship sedan pricing. And I'm really curious how well it does. I personally hope it does well. I think it'd be great to see some of these on the road. I would love this as, a rental car if I went somewhere. What are some of your final takeaways?
I mean, you just said something I didn't even think of, rental car.
Yeah.
This would be a great rental car for me, at least. It's got a lot of room. It's comfortable. It's a nice driving vehicle. And I agree with you about the positioning. It's not really a premium brand, but this is sort of a premium type of a vehicle, not full-on premium. But this is not like an economy car. When you sit in it, seats are very comfortable. They're heated. They're air conditioned. They massage you. You've got a head-up display.
Yep.
There's not a lot of hard plastics. Most of the plastic here is padded.
Yeah.
It's a nice feel, and it drives really well. So that's the biggest point to me, was how well this drives. It really drives well, especially being able to adjust the suspension and with the different drive modes. And as you mentioned, the new dynamic dampening system. It's a good vehicle.
Yeah, how do you feel about not having one pedal driving? Because I'm thinking about the things that separate Volkswagen, either for better or for worse. Similar to Porsche, no one pedal driving. That's a thing that a lot of other EVs are starting to adopt. Plus the whole mindset of no front trunk. Like, they're doing things a bit differently than some of the competition. How do you feel about some of those?
Well, I would prefer if they offered the option to have one pedal driving. If you don't want it, you could switch it off. It kind of befuddles me when I see that some manufacturers are taking that position as, no, this is what you want to drive. Mm-hmm. And, maybe the majority of their customers do prefer it this way. I don't know. But give us the option to have one pedal braking and configurable, turn it on, turn it off. I don't understand why they wouldn't do that. They could easily do that in the software.
Yeah.
So give it to us.
It is interesting how I literally earlier I was like, I'm so glad they give us so much control, but like over certain things like audio, yes, dynamic chassis control, yes, but you want one pedal driving? No, sorry.
Yeah, I could see some German engineer like in the back saying, "You do not want this.
Yeah,
This is not good." You know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
That was a terrible German accent, by the way.
okay.
But
We're in
yeah,
France, you know.
just give us the option to turn it on, turn it off. It's real simple.
Yeah, and I guess I would selfishly say I'd love to have a bit of a frunk. You don't need to give me a Lucid frunk. Lucid's very proud of their giant frunk that you could sit in or sleep in. No, I like having that section that's kind of separate, and actually like the frunks that are like, you know, just rubber or like meant to throw like dirty boots in or something, like, or that's where I'd keep car cleaning products. Of course, an EVSE, you know, charging cable for on the go. That'd be a great place to store it where it's not underneath the floor that might be full of all of your stuff. I think that'd be a nice thing, maybe someday, Volkswagen, but it's really not a big deal. These are not deal breakers. This car is fantastic. And we were talking about rentals earlier. You know, another thing is ride sharing. If I ordered an Uber and this showed up, I'd be like, great, I have ample backseat space. I'm gonna be thrilled. So there you have it, the Volkswagen ID.7. We found a random town with a random French sunset to kind of give our final thoughts. And his final thoughts. So we're wrapping up before we get to the hotel because the hotel is gonna be dark out by the time we get there. But this is the ID.7. And yeah, it's a fantastic car. I am really excited to see the future variants. So it will come to the US, possibly launch with all-wheel drive. I'm not sure yet. We just don't know all the US metrics, including price, which is a bummer. But we know for sure it will be coming with all-wheel drive and a big battery as options. Those are what I'm really excited to try out. Now, the turning radius in this is fantastic. I suspect the all-wheel drive might impede on that a little bit, just like it did with ID.4, but still, ID.4 all-wheel drive is so good. I've hooned that on a few canyons, allegedly, and I would love to see this with all-wheel drive and the big battery. But even with this spec, rear-wheel drive small battery, I'm still very impressed. It projected around 300 miles of range, even in this spec, so I suspect the bigger battery will get you well into the 300s. Once we know EPA ratings, we'll of course let you guys know. But that's really pretty much it. ID.7, I'm pretty impressed. Tom's obviously impressed. We're, yeah, intrigued to see this. We're happy to see it come to America. We of course wish the wagon was coming, but of course, no one buys wagons. Why? Why does everyone obsess over SUVs? It's fine, SUVs are very useful. High ride height is something a lot of people like. Of course, people like to be able to off-road and throw everything possible in the car. So it's cool to see the sedan coming. And I think it proves that sedans can still be super valuable and super useful. The lift back space especially helps. Plenty of interior room, plenty of storage space, ample amounts of headroom to the moon on both the front and rear passengers. So I think it's a fantastic package. What do you guys think of the ID.7? What do you think of the improvements and the changes? Hope to see some of these things trickle down the ID lineup. And of course, can't wait to drive more ID things like the ID Buzz. And come on, Volkswagen, bring us the ID.2 GTI. We're ready to try that out in the future. We hope. But anyways, thanks for watching another out of spec reviews video. And thanks for joining us on this little trip around France. We'll see you in the next video very soon. Bye.